Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, her website taxpayer.com. Welcome back to the show, Kris.
Thank you so much.
Kris, we just found out that from the Veteran Affairs Minister that it's going to take at least another 2 years to look after the backlog of disability benefit applications from our veterans. Did this government forget that we had veterans, and did the government before it? I remember the Harper government budgeted billions for veteran aid and then never sent it out.
So full disclosure, I was Aaron O'Toole's Director of Communications when he was Veterans Affairs Minister. So that's out there. And now I am, of course, the BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Whenever we ask our supporters about what priorities they want us to focus on, help for veterans is definitely one of them. That's not an area that anybody has ever told us to advocate cutting. So I'll put it that way. And then when I put my old hat back on at Veterans Affairs Canada, I'll be blunt. That bureaucracy needs to work faster. They don't work fast enough. We don't know what the problem is, why they're working so slow. Maybe their software isn't up to date. Maybe they don't have good intercommunications with their offices between Ottawa and Charlottetown. But people will notice, if I'm being as fair as possible, if they go back through Veterans Affairs ministers, Liberal, Conservative, Liberal, doesn't seem to matter which party it is. It's still very, very slow. So, this doesn't seem, and I'll say seem, this doesn't seem to be a problem with who the minister is or which party he or she is a part of. It always seems to be constant within that department. And that department needs to work faster and better. There's no excuse for there to be a 2-year backlog.
Maybe they need to hire some former veterans, some disabled veterans to look after it. Because I know my Army engineer buddies, there isn't a problem they couldn't solve in an hour or two. What's taking the government so long?
Great question and great point. And I personally find that experience is an amazing teacher. It not only motivates you because you have been there, done that, and you've felt that pain, so to speak. It allows you to be empathic and to truly know what somebody needs because you've been there and done it. And so it's an empathic and efficient way of getting things done. In fact, again, going back to my time when I worked with Minister O'Toole made sure that his political staff, half of them were either active duty armed forces or veterans themselves. And he himself is a veteran himself. And so it was quite interesting to see, because I've always been a civilian. So I was just, fresh off the boat from the press gallery. I've been a reporter for most of my life. And I basically sat and watched these folks fix things, in their view. And they attacked it with a real sense of efficiency. And so, yeah, they need to have serious reform at Veterans Affairs. 2 years is far too long to wait. And just speaking as a person, hearing from veterans who are waiting, and from their families who are waiting, is extremely difficult because all of them have their own stories and their own experiences, and it's unfair to make those folks wait longer. So anything that can be done to streamline and speed up that process, that department better get its act together and get it done.
Now, of course, these are the most loyal Canadians. They put their lives on the line and have nearly paid that price. But being disabled, maybe for some of them, they would feel even worse than their buddies who got killed in the same incident.
There's different levels of disability, it's true. Some of the folks have had traumatic physical injuries and have had to have major surgery as a result of those injuries. Others have had mental injuries, mental wounds, and they need serious help too. And so I have taken calls and had very heartfelt, long conversations with men and women from either of those groups, and sometimes both, because along with the physical sometimes comes with the mental and vice versa. So, and I've never met one Canadian, honestly, that has not loved the troops and wanted more help for Canadian Armed Forces veterans. And so again, across party lines, like something's got to give here. That department has got to figure out a way of doing things more efficiently and faster and in a more fair manner. Like this has been going on now for years, and across parties, that has got to get sorted out. It's very similar to what we seem to continuously come back to with not having clean drinking water for all Canadians. I'm particularly talking about First Nations folks who are often living in remote areas and on reserve. How long have we been talking about this for? And again, it's something that most Canadians say, yeah, this should have been done years ago. It's a no-brainer. So what's the hold-up? So they have got to get this seriously fixed.
Well, I mean, I look at a government that's spent over, or is sending over $200 million to fight climate change in Latin America, which just happens to be on the equator. I don't see how the climate there's going to change one way or the other. But, you know, again, people without clean drinking water, disabled veterans. I'm wondering, has that young captain who lost her leg reporting for duty and had to pay for her own $45,000 prosthetic, did she get reimbursed yet?
That's a great question. She could be still waiting, or maybe she might have hit a lucky stream and actually gotten it reimbursed by now. And there's stories like that. There's stories like back before this COVID hit, so, you know, erase that from your memory for a moment. There's stories where we've got 90-something-year-old Second World War veterans, married couples, together, who weren't being housed and homed together because of some color on a bureaucrat's entry paper. I'm not kidding. Like, that stuff happened so often, and it was so frustrating because you could see good people in the department trying to fix it and good people in the minister's office trying to fix it, and it just seemed to take so long to get anything done. So they need a serious overhaul there.
Why does the government hate veterans?
Honestly, I don't think they do. You know, quite often when we were dealing with the veterans, and again, this was my own experience, and people from other parties as well. I know some of the folks that took over with the Liberals when they took over. It isn't that. Most of them have a great respect for them. It just seems to have been baked in for so long, some of these inefficiencies, that it's almost impossible for them to see their way out of it. It's just business as usual, and this is how we always do things. You know how it happens when it becomes part of, you know, an institutional culture? And I think that's it. It's not, in my experience, it wasn't a malcontent or nefariousness. It was just part of the process, and that process needs to be turned upside down and fixed.
We'll have more with Kris Sims right after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Value from success, growth in discovery. Golden Arrow Resources is a well-funded gold-copper exploration company with proven management and prospective properties in Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. Golden Arrow trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange, symbol GRG, on Frankfurt, symbol G6A, and the OTCQB, symbol GARWF. For more information, visit us at goldenarrowresources.com or call Sean at 778-686-0135.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Kris Sims. Kris, an Ontario Liberal MP, was busted by the CBC for hiring her sister illegally to work in her constituency office. She says it was an honest mistake. I heard that sister would actually hide when people came into the office.
The idea that this is an honest mistake, you know, I was born in the morning. I wasn't born this morning. and I don't know many people who believe that. Keep in mind that this Liberal MP appears to have had training as an accountant. Those folks are used to understanding rules and going by the book, and apparently using a different name for this sister to be hired, and it was kind of the unspoken thing where you don't mention it. This is not okay. And this would not be okay if this were a Bloc member or a Green Party member or a Conservative member or an NDP member. Hiring your sister to work at your constituency office is an obvious violation of the codes that you sign on to when you're becoming an MP. I mean, it's staring you right in the face. So every nickel of taxpayers' money needs to be paid back in this instance. It's completely unacceptable.
Should the RCMP launch a fraud investigation?
Nothing would stop them from doing so. If they believe that there's enough reason to pursue those investigations, then that's up to them. But as far as the Parliament goes, and as far as taxpayers go, at the very least, all of this money needs to be paid back because it was misappropriated. It shouldn't have gone to where it went to.
If this MP was doing it, how many more might be doing the same thing?
This is a great question. The Ethics Commissioner, let's hope that they can take a strong look at every member of Parliament and make sure that they're not hiring their siblings to do work like this. And if for some reason there's, some familial relation, and they've already cleared it to the Ethics Commissioner where, they're, representing an environmental organization and it was still the best person to choose and it was double blind and the Ethics Commissioner signed off on it. Even then, I can't even imagine that happening. But if the Ethics Commissioner gave it a go-ahead, then that's one thing. This looks like it was straight up change your name so you can work in the constituency office. And good on the CBC for finding it and blowing the whistle here.
No wonder the government never likes the CBC.
Well, it's one of those things where we need stronger transparency. Transparency and accountability are really the gold standard that we should all be aiming for, regardless of who you vote for. Because if you're an excellent member of Parliament and you have good, hardworking, earnest staff in both your Parliament office and your constituency office, and if you're a minister, same deal with it within your department, that matters. Because good governing matters. That means that we will have more efficient government, more nimble government, more responsive government, and hopefully one that saves taxpayers money. But this, trying to cover things up and hide things, is not okay. And that is why we need more attention paid to accountability and to the Ethics Commissioner. We need tougher watchdogs.
Documents requested from by ethics investigators were destroyed. Is that an obstruction of justice that should be investigated?
Isn't that shocking? Isn't that just shocking? Yes, in any way possible this should be investigated. Again, we're careful to say that's up to the RCMP if they decide, that's up to the Ethics Commissioner to decide. It's always up to those bodies. So the good point is we have those bodies and it's possible. But on the face of it, the notion that these documents were destroyed while all of this was going on and being investigated, that's just textbook wrong. You can't have that sort of thing happening. And good on Blacklock's reporter for constantly sticking on this committee story with the investigation and for publishing this story.
Do you think there's political interference in the RCMP? Because they don't seem to investigate these things. We never hear of charges.
Oh, good question. And again, transparency and sunshine in any organization, especially when it's dealing with taxpayers' money and it's a public organization, is always a good thing. So hopefully they have a way of doing checks and balances there.
We'll have more with Kris Sims right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Kris Sims. Vancouver City Council has voted to hire a municipal Auditor General. Is that a good move?
It is a good move. We haven't had a chance to thoroughly investigate exactly what they mean by this, but on its very surface, the headline sounds great. More accountability and transparency in auditing is direly needed. In fact, we've been advocating now for a boosted-up municipal Auditor General here in British Columbia. We want a very strong, well-backed, well-researched, well-staffed office that looks into the spending and behavior of municipalities, whether they're small towns or big cities. Because right now we have one, but it's a name only. I mean, I think there's 11 people there on staff. They're drastically underfunded from the looks of it. They barely have any teeth, very little power. We want somebody that has the power of former Federal Auditor General Sheila Fraser, that can head up a team and be on duty here in British Columbia permanently as a watchdog team. Because we get calls here at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation all the time from, reporters who are struggling to put two and two together while they're covering a story and doing a darn good job of it as their local city councillor, contractors who are finding something fishy in their local city town halls, and there's nowhere to call. There's us, and then there's so few other bodies that you can call for accountability. So we need a big, nonpartisan, functioning, strong whistleblower's office that is headed up by a serious auditor that keeps an eye on this stuff. Because more power and more money are running through city halls now than ever before. It's a huge shift.
Should politicians take a pay cut or at least a pay freeze, maybe be a little more empathetic towards the people who've lost their jobs or are struggling right now because of the pandemic?
Absolutely. And first off, we know that in some limited areas that some politicians and bureaucrats have had pay cuts, so taking that as granted. Yes, at the very start, at the very least, we think all politicians and bureaucrats should be taking a 15% pay cut. And in fact, when they take a look at the departments, especially at the federal level, they should be reducing their workforce by 15%. If that means early retirement or not replacing people that have already left, so be it. But they should reduce it there. And we know that when it comes to senior bureaucrats and high-rolling politicians, that 15% might not sound like much, but at least it'll get them on the empathy train. So that when they say we're all in this together, it means we're all in this together. Because frankly, we've been seeing tweets from senators lately, things like that, saying, we need to have a serious lockdown and we're all in this together, A senator? Are you kidding me? They've got jobs for life. So it's very easy for somebody to say, oh yes, we should shut this down, we should lock this down, we should reduce this, reduce that, when they haven't felt a nickel's worth of change. So in order to have them truly understand the commons, as they are supposed to represent, as elected representatives, as MPs and MLAs and bureaucrats, then they should be having similar salary reductions, pay reductions, as the rest of us.
Does Vancouver need a homelessness czar, or would it just be another overpaid bureaucrat who probably doesn't accomplish much?
This almost reminds me back to our Veterans Affairs conversation that we were having. It's so frustrating to see people who are truly in need, who are so vulnerable, who are right on the edge, who seemingly aren't getting the efficient and clear aid that should be there from government. I mean, we pay enough in taxes. The amount of money that flows in to that department and that realm of helping homelessness and folks who are fighting addictions, it's tons, it's millions of dollars. So where is it going? And so, the last thing we need is another layer of bureaucracy and some other paid manager to deal with this. We already have an entire group that deals with this. It's called BC Housing. And we've got so many managers and middle managers at Vancouver City Hall. Couldn't they simply interface better with BC Housing? Have a more clear and open level of communication so they actually get their job done? There's no need to create a brand new layer and call it a housing czar.
Well, of course, once they create a bureaucracy, that housing czar is going to need an assistant.
Yep.
And, the city manager makes $360,000?
Correct.
Plus expenses, car allowance.
That's right. And probably free parking passes and probably transit passes. In fact, we have several Freedom of Information requests out right now into Vancouver City Hall to find out how many of these bureaucrats who are advocating for massive downtown tolls and transport pricing, as they call it, how many of them were curious, we don't know, have vehicle allowances and free parking passes. We'd really like to know that. So yeah, the last thing we need is to appoint somebody and name a brand new level of bureaucracy with all of his or her assistants and accoutrements. We need to make do with what we already have, and they need to get their job done better. And again, this is one of the reasons why we need a municipal auditor general, because we'll hear anecdotally that millions of dollars are going into fighting the homeless problem, and yet anybody who drives into downtown Vancouver or even different areas of British Columbia, frankly, now sees bigger and bigger homeless camps of desperate people. So where is this money going, and why isn't it helping? So a municipal auditor general would hopefully be able to find some of those answers.
Well, we always have recommendations from auditor generals at various levels every year. How often do governments actually follow up on those recommendations?
You know, it depends on the news cycle and if the Auditor General is able to communicate his or her findings clearly. And I'll give you an example. Bonnie Lysyk was the Auditor General in Ontario. She was the one that researched and found out all sorts of crazy nonsense that was going on with the provincial green plan that was causing Ontarians' hydro prices to just skyrocket. And I mean crazy town. Just to give you a personal example, we had a small 3-bedroom rental home, and we had natural gas for heat. We weren't even using electricity for heat. Our hydro bill was more than $400 a month. And we were being super careful. We were doing laundry at midnight. We were using LED light bulbs. It was crazy town. Lots of people were paying even more than that. And it was Bonnie Lysyk, actually, who was an Auditor General there, that just blew the whistle on that. And it got tons of media. And guess what? You know, Mr. Ford is now Premier, and he campaigned mostly on hydro. Now, rolling back the clock even further, Sheila Fraser. She's the one that was investigating the sponsorship scandal. She's the one that found out about all those contracts and wheelings and dealings. So, to answer your question, it can sometimes have a dramatic impact depending on how good that AG is. And we need somebody of that caliber that's keeping an eye on what is going on in our municipalities across BC.
The BC legislature still doesn't have anybody who's in charge of their monstrous budget, should they?
Not as far as we know, and they need to get back to work as soon as possible and as soon as it's safe to do so. So, again, they've got a majority now. We're going to have to keep a very close eye on it. We have had some victories there in the sense that now, finally, the clerk and the Speaker of the House and the Sergeant-at-Arms have to post their expenses. I know it sounds nuts, but before that, they didn't have to. Before, former Speaker Darryl Plecas found out all that he found out and blew the whistle there. So now they need to post those things. MLAs need to post all of their expenses. A few years ago, they didn't even need to do that. And so we have seen some baby steps towards accountability, but we need to see more. We need to see the LAMC committee, the Legislative Assembly Management Committee, have more teeth, and they have to start calling in witnesses whenever they see spending that isn't okay.
The commission investigating money laundering in BC, should there be real accountability from politicians who allowed it to happen? Absolutely.
Absolutely. Again, and the more transparency and the more accountability, the better. So this commission is apparently going over this with a pretty fine-tooth comb. We've been following very closely a lot of the reporters that have been covering it every single day, and we thank the news outlets who are sticking with the story. So anything that they find out, yeah, they should act on it.
Kris, anything else buzzing around your little bonnet today?
Well, just to point out that, and this is no joke, our debt clock doesn't have enough room on it anymore. We're going to hit $1 trillion federal debt, and we literally don't have enough digits on it. We're going to have to find out a way of building another one. And we use that as a symbol of federal debt, national debt, in order to tell people physically, like show them how much you are going to owe and how much you do owe. And this is a serious thing. And we need the federal government to pull up its socks. They have to present a budget. They have to get their fiscal house in order. We just cannot afford this. Nobody can afford this. The stat I read recently while doing my presentation to Vancouver City Hall against transport pricing was shocking. It said that 44% of British Columbians are $200 away from insolvency. That means at the end of every month, they have to pick which bill to pay, and they don't know if it's going to clear their bank account. 44%. And that's just in BC. So, and we're doing better than a lot of other provinces. So we have got to come to grips with the fact that this is a debt monster that we're dealing with federally, that our economy is extremely vulnerable right now, and we need to take it seriously, no matter which party you support. You've got to demand more accountability and better work out of your MPs.
Kris, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Her website, taxpayer.com. Kris, is it okay if people email you?
Absolutely. I would love to hear from them, how you guys are coping, what's happening with your business, what's happening with your job, what's going on. It's the letter K, Sims, S-I-M-S, at taxpayer.com.
If you have any questions for Kris, you can also send them through us. If you go to info@housestreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of House Street Media Incorporated.